The night rain hammered the narrow Seattle alley like 1,000 cold needles, turning the pavement into a glossy river of broken reflections. A woman lay against the brick wall, shaking, her breath coming in sharp, terrified bursts as water dripped from her soaked hair. Her expensive blazer clung to her frozen body, and her trembling fingers pressed weakly against her swollen ankle. She looked like someone who had fallen straight from a world of power into one of helpless desperation. Her eyes widened at the silhouette approaching her through the haze of street lamps and falling rain. She whispered in a cracked, pleading voice that carried the rawness of someone who had run out of strength and trust. "Please, don't hurt me. I can't walk." That one sentence held every piece of her fear, and it froze the man who had stopped in his tracks, his young daughter's hand still in his. That image of a powerful woman reduced to trembling fear in a lonely alley was the moment everything began to change. If you believe in kindness, redemption, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps bring more emotional stories to life. Her name was Marissa Caldwell, a 37-year-old CEO known throughout the Pacific Northwest for her fierce leadership, pristine reputation, and a company culture built on strength rather than softness. She was the woman people whispered about: powerful, intimidating, unreachable. But tonight she was just a terrified human being alone in the rain, stranded after twisting her ankle while running from a situation she had never expected to find herself in. She had left a high-stake charity gala early when a persistent board member crossed boundaries she could not ignore. Escaping through the back exit, she had made her way into an alley, only to fall hard on the slick ground. Her phone was dead, her driver was gone, and the rain felt like a punishment. She wasn't used to vulnerability, she wasn't prepared for it, she believed. No one would stop to help a woman in a soaked business suit on a night like this, until someone did. The man kneeling in front of her was Grant Walker, a 34-year-old single father raising his 5-year-old daughter Mia on his own after his wife had passed away from complications during childbirth. He worked 2 jobs, one as an overnight security guard and another at a local hardware store. Life had never been gentle to him, but it had taught him something far more valuable than bitterness: compassion. Grant wasn't the kind of person to walk past someone hurting, even if they looked like they belonged in a world far wealthier than his. He could tell Marissa was terrified, but what struck him most was that she seemed more afraid of him than of the injury itself. He spoke gently, assuring her that he meant no harm, that he just wanted to help. The fear in her face shifted into confusion, then exhaustion, and finally the faintest glimmer of trust. The rain had soaked through every layer of her clothing, her ankle was beginning to swell, and she was shivering uncontrollably. Grant removed his own jacket, thin, worn, and barely water-resistant, but he placed it around her shoulders without hesitation, leaving himself to the cold. Mia, in her bright pink raincoat, moved closer and simply stood there, watching Marissa with wide, compassionate eyes. Something about the quiet innocence of the child touched Marissa more deeply than she expected. She hadn't been around children in years. Her life revolved around boardrooms, contracts, investor calls, and endless demands. She had forgotten what pure kindness looked like. Grant gently lifted her from the ground despite the rain soaking his shirt, despite the heavy bags under his eyes from countless sleepless nights, despite the fact that carrying a stranger was inconvenient and difficult. He didn't ask who she was. He didn't judge her. He didn't pry. He simply helped because someone needed help, and for the first time in years, Marissa felt safe in the presence of another human being who wanted nothing from her. He carried her to his old truck, parked a short distance away. The interior was modest, a little messy with children's drawings and snack wrappers, but warm. Mia climbed into the back seat as Grant carefully settled Marissa into the passenger side. She felt a quiet ache in her chest as she looked around, a home built not with wealth but with love. She realized she hadn't felt that kind of warmth in her own luxury SUV in years. Grant drove her to an urgent care clinic that was still open, even though he had planned to take Mia home and prepare dinner. When they arrived, Marissa tried to insist she would be fine and that he didn't need to stay, but he stayed anyway, sitting across from her in the waiting room as the storm raged outside. She watched the way he held Mia on his lap, gently brushing her damp hair from her forehead. He was tired beyond tired, but still present, still attentive. And when he looked at Marissa, he looked not with suspicion or judgment, but with simple human concern. After the doctor confirmed her ankle was sprained and bandaged it, Marissa realized she didn't know how she would get home. Grant offered to drive her, and though she felt guilty asking more of him, she agreed. The ride back to her penthouse building was quiet but filled with an unspoken tenderness she had not experienced in years. When Grant pulled up in front of the towering glass skyscraper, Marissa hesitated before opening the door. She didn't want the moment to end, the moment where she wasn't a CEO, but simply a person someone cared enough to help. She thanked him softly, her voice cracking without warning. For a woman who commanded hundreds of employees, she found herself struggling to speak a simple sentence of gratitude. Grant smiled, wished her well, and drove away into the rain with Mia waving through the back window. Marissa watched them until the truck turned the corner, disappearing into the darkness, leaving her standing there with the borrowed jacket still around her shoulders. She didn't return it. She couldn't. It was the first thing in years that made her feel human. In the following days, Marissa couldn't stop thinking about that night. Her company thrived, her meetings were productive, and her board respected her, yet she felt a strange emptiness she couldn't ignore. The world she lived in was cold, polished, and transactional. But that rainy alley, that worn truck, that tired single dad and his little girl had shown her something money couldn't buy. She had finally experienced what true kindness felt like, and she wanted to feel it again. So she found him. After asking a few questions at the urgent care clinic, she tracked Grant down to the hardware store. When she walked inside, everyone stared. After all, it wasn't every day that a powerful CEO walked into a small neighborhood store. Grant froze when he saw her, surprised but not intimidated. Mia ran to Marissa with pure excitement, hugging her leg, and something in Marissa's heart broke open. She didn't know how desperately she needed that small gesture until it happened. Marissa insisted on returning his jacket, but Grant shook his head and told her to keep it. The moment made her eyes sting. She asked him if he would join her and Mia for lunch on his break. He hesitated, his world didn't mix with hers, but Marissa looked at him with genuine, vulnerable sincerity. She wasn't asking as a CEO. She was asking as the woman who had once lain helpless in the rain and had been saved by a stranger. They went to a small diner nearby, the kind Grant could afford, not the kind Marissa usually ate in. She found comfort in the chipped mugs and mismatched plates. For once, no one expected her to lead, to impress, to justify her existence. She simply existed, and being around Grant and Mia felt like stepping into a hidden corner of life she had never taken the time to appreciate. One lunch turned into several. Several lunches turned into evening walks. Evening walks turned into shared stories. Marissa learned that Grant had struggled for years, balancing 2 jobs while raising Mia alone. He learned that beneath Marissa's icy corporate exterior was a woman who had never felt free to show weakness. They became each other's quiet escape from the burdens they carried. But the world around them wasn't kind. Some of Marissa's board members questioned her distraction. A few even gossiped about the mystery man she occasionally met after work. Grant's co-workers teased him, telling him a woman like her would never choose someone like him. The doubts crept in, the insecurities gnawed, and yet, every time they met, every time their eyes connected, the noise faded. The turning point came one evening when Marissa visited Grant's small apartment. Mia had drawn a picture of the 3 of them holding hands under a bright sun, and she placed it proudly on the coffee table. Marissa stared at that drawing for a long time, her throat tightening. She wanted that. Not the drawing itself, but the feeling behind it. The simplicity, the love, the belonging. She realized she had spent her entire adult life chasing success, but she had never once chased happiness. Grant noticed the tears she tried to hide. He reached for her hand, and in that small gesture she felt everything she had been missing. They didn't confess love that night. They didn't need to. The connection between them had grown quietly, tenderly, without force. It was real. Over the next weeks, Marissa slowly made changes in her life. She delegated responsibilities at work so she wouldn't drown in stress. She spent more evenings with Grant and Mia than at corporate dinners. She found herself laughing more, smiling more, breathing more. The ice around her heart slowly melted. And one day, on a rare sunny afternoon, as Mia picked flowers in a small city park, Marissa looked at Grant and realized she was no longer the woman who had begged in fear. In a dark alley, she was no longer the cold CEO who forgot how to feel. She had become someone new, someone healed by kindness, grounded by love, and transformed by the simple compassion of a man who had nothing to offer but his heart. But that heart had changed everything. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support means the world and helps more people discover these emotional stories. Special request, before the story ends, comment below, kindness changes lives. Marissa, Grant, and little Mia eventually built a life together, one shaped not by wealth or power, but by warmth, trust, and second chances. And years later, whenever someone asked Marissa what changed her life, she would smile quietly and think back to a rainy alley in Seattle, where a single dad stopped to help a stranger and ended up rewriting both their destinies.